Donald Trump is at war again. Not with Democrats, not with the press, not with foreign adversaries. This time, the conflict is inside his own house. Donald Trump is now openly at odds with his vice president, and that alone says everything about the level of dysfunction currently gripping the Republican Party under Trump's leadership. What we're watching is not a normal policy disagreement. It's not a healthy internal debate, and it's certainly not a typical White House disagreement. This is something much bigger. It's a slow burn political rupture unfolding in real time. By every indication, Trump is actively distancing himself from J.D. Vance, publicly, privately, and strategically, as pressure inside the Republican Party intensifies over foreign policy, war, and Trump's increasingly unpredictable decision-making. And here's why this matters. J.D. Vance was marketed as the future of the movement. Trump, however, is now behaving as if Vance is disposable. At this point, Trump appears to be fighting nearly everyone around him. He's attacking Congress, he's lashing out at members of his own administration, he's pressuring the Federal Reserve, he's threatening institutions designed to function independently. And now, remarkably, he's clashing with the one person who should theoretically be untouchable inside his administration, his vice president. The trigger for this conflict is war. More specifically, Trump's erratic, contradictory, and increasingly aggressive posture toward Iran, a posture J.D. Vance knows could permanently destroy his political future. The breaking point came when Trump stepped in front of the cameras and casually claimed that Iran had called him to negotiate. He spoke confidently, but without specifics. He spoke vaguely, as if foreign policy were being improvised in real time. Iran, he said, had reached out, talks were happening. And then, almost in the same breath, he suggested the U.S. might need to take action before those talks even occur. That wasn't strategy, that wasn't diplomacy, that was confusion dressed up as authority. Everyone inside the White House recognized it immediately. You cannot threaten military action while simultaneously claiming diplomatic negotiations are underway without creating panic, not just internationally, but inside your own government. Trump offered no clarity on what action meant, no explanation of who initiated contact, no definition of the objective, and perhaps most revealing of all, no explanation for why this language looks nothing like how he talks about Vladimir Putin. Trump has never spoken to Putin this way. He has never threatened him, never warned him, never claimed leverage. But with Iran, the tone shifts instantly. Tariffs, threats, strikes on the table. That contradiction is critical because it reveals what this moment actually is. This is not a coherent foreign policy, it's impulse. Trump speaks forcefully when he thinks it plays well politically. He gets vague when he doesn't understand the consequences, and he contradicts himself when someone else will have to deal with the fallout. J.D. Vance understands exactly where this road leads. His entire political rebrand was built around one promise: no new wars. That message wasn't just for voters, it was for a Republican base exhausted by endless foreign conflicts. Vance sold himself as the anti-interventionist, the America First skeptic of military adventures, the figure willing to challenge the old neocon playbook. That image is now under serious threat. Trump is drifting back toward war, and he appears completely indifferent to the political wreckage it creates. Inside the White House, tension followed immediately, not because Vance suddenly discovered moral restraint, but because he understands the math. A war with Iran would rattle global markets, oil prices would spike, economic instability would spread, and more importantly for Vance, it would destroy his 2028 ambitions before they even begin. That's when the leaks started. Anonymous officials began appearing in the press. Stories framed Vance as the voice urging diplomacy. Trump was portrayed as leaning toward strikes. That doesn't happen by accident. It's a signal. J.D. Vance is intentionally creating distance, quietly, carefully, but deliberately. He knows the pattern. Trump doesn't retreat, he escalates. And when escalation fails, the people closest to him take the blame. We've seen it before. Cabinet secretaries, advisors, attorneys general, defense officials. Proximity never protects you. J.D. Vance is learning that lesson in real time. And Trump is already treating him less like a partner and more like a liability. Behind the scenes, Trump's allies are furious. They view Vance's calls for diplomacy not as caution, but as disloyalty. They see the leaks not as concern, but as positioning. And Trump despises positioning. He demands obedience. This conflict now extends far beyond Iran. It exposes how Trump actually views power. He doesn't see J.D. Vance as a successor, he sees him as a subordinate forgetting his place. And when Trump feels challenged, especially on something performative as war, he responds aggressively. Trump continues listening to the loudest voices in the room, the interventionists, the permanent war advocates. Restraint doesn't carry weight with him, caution doesn't, and J.D. Vance doesn't. That explains the leaks. Vance is trying to preserve his political identity, to protect his anti-war credibility, to ensure that when things unravel, he can say, "I warned against this." But that's not courage, that's insulation. Trump understands that, which is why the rift is widening. He doesn't tolerate anyone planning an exit while standing beside him. To Trump, loyalty means sinking with the ship, smiling. J.D. Vance isn't doing that. He's already thinking about 2028, and Trump can feel it. That's why it feels like abandonment, not in words, but in intent. Vance is no longer operating primarily as Trump's vice president. He's operating as a future presidential candidate trapped inside Trump's administration. Those instincts cannot coexist. Trump wants dominance now, Vance wants survival later, and that collision is inevitable. Trump was never truly anti-war. No new wars was branding, not policy. Vance built his identity on that branding, and Trump is now exposing it. That's why Vance is quietly panicking. If Trump authorizes strikes on Iran, even limited ones, Vance's entire pitch collapses instantly. So he's creating distance, because once the consequences hit, Trump will look for someone to blame. He always does, and vice presidents make convenient targets. J.D. Vance knows the pattern. He watched it happen to Mike Pence. Now he's trying to get ahead of it. But here's the deeper truth. Trump no longer needs J.D. Vance. He already has the base, the media attention, the dominance. Vance was supposed to represent continuity. Trump has no interest in continuity, only control. And anyone who starts acting independently becomes a threat. That's why Trump is abandoning Vance, not loudly, not officially, but strategically. And the rest of the Republican Party is watching carefully. Because if Trump will sideline his own vice president for urging restraint, no one else is safe. Loyalty is temporary, restraint is punishable, survival requires distance. That's why Republicans are quietly preparing for a post-Trump future while pretending loyalty. This is how internal party wars begin, not with rebellion, but with self-preservation. J.D. Vance is just the first visible crack, and once those cracks appear, they spread.